Good morning. I have a topic today that may be a little bit unusual. I wonder if you saw my title and wondered what I might be talking about. I hope that was intriguing to you. Depression Era Values in the Age of Sustainability. Well, I'll start with what I'm not going to talk about. I'm not going to be talking about ride sharing, and I'm not going to be talking about living off the land. But what I would like to talk about is how growing up on a farm in Middle Tennessee, not very far from here, born to parents who were born during the Great Depression, has influenced my view of sustainability and impacted how I lead Eastman's energy efficiency program. So simple values learned as part of my youth influence how I see sustainability. And we see the first evidence of how a simple value can impact sustainability through how Eastman looks at sustainability. So we believe that the value created has to be much greater than the resources that we consume. We define sustainability by these three pillars, and the one that I focus on is driving resource productivity. In my particular job, I am focused on energy efficiency, water conservation and reuse, and renewable energy for the company, which has grown tremendously over the last 9 years. We've gone from 8 manufacturing sites to over 50 today around the world. It is no exaggeration to say that sustainability is literally driving innovation at Eastman. We believe that not only must we live sustainability, but we must create products that do the same for our customers. We expect our raw materials to be sustainably sourced. We expect our products to reduce energy downstream when further manufacturing is done. And we expect our products to last longer. So I'd like to talk a little bit of some of the lessons from my youth and how those apply today. So I'm sure most everyone remembers learning to ride a bike. I certainly remember that. And riding a bike is something that we just don't forget how to do. Even if I don't ride a bike for months or even a year, if I get on a bike, I know how to do it. And I think what you'll see that I'm going to talk about are other principles that you probably learned as a child that are ingrained. It's not really something you have to think about or learn anew. It just lasts. So the lessons I'm going to be talking about are: first, help your neighbor, live within your means, be true to your values, and plan for the future. So we'll start with help your neighbor. And I'd like to share an example of how Eastman helped our neighbor in Kingsport, Tennessee. If you're not familiar with Tennessee, Kingsport is in the northeast corner of the state, and our largest manufacturing site, one of the largest chemical manufacturing sites in the country, and our corporate headquarters are located there. So we had a situation where Kingsport City Schools approached the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and said that they wanted to spend more than $1 million to hire a behavior-based consultant to reduce energy use within the schools. Now, when they went to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, I was really pleased to see the next day a quote in the newspaper. The mayor said, "Before you spend over $1 million on a consultant, have you considered asking Eastman to help? They have an award-winning energy program." Well, sure enough, I soon got a phone call from one of our executive team members saying, "Sharon, can you and your team help the school system?" And so we got involved with the schools. We used Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which helps you know how your building is performing in terms of energy compared to similar buildings across the country. There are many, many buildings in this database. In fact, there are over 50,000 schools in the database. So we worked with the city school system, helped them put all their data into Portfolio Manager, and what we learned is most of their schools were performing very well. They did have a few that were not performing well, and one in particular where their energy performance had declined. So we helped them interpret the data, taught them how to do energy efficiency assessments, and ultimately the school system decided that $1 million was not a good use of their resources, and the consultant was never hired. So it's a great example of how we helped a local neighbor. But today, Neighbor is a much more global concept. Eastman participates in 2 government programs. They were mentioned in my intro, the Energy Star Industrial Partner Program and the DOE Better Plants Program, of which we are a challenge member. So the drive to improve energy efficiency convinced us that we would benefit by being part of these 2 programs. And both programs have industrial partner networks that are extremely valuable to us. I'm pictured here with Al Hildreth. He's the energy manager at General Motors. I had heard about water reuse projects that GM had done, and when I had a conference in the area, it was a simple phone call to Al to say, hey, can I come visit when I'm in Michigan? And he welcomed me to come. It's a 2-way street. When I first became energy manager for Eastman, Energy Star assigned me a mentor. My mentor was 3M's Steve Schultz. And then later, when Corning had a new energy manager, they asked if he could visit Eastman and learn from us. The network is great, the programs are great. I know I only have to send an email or pick up the phone and call, and someone will be ready to help me or give me advice. The second lesson I want to mention is to live within your means. As I mentioned, my parents were born during the Great Depression. Anyone who lived and grew up during that time is very careful to live within their means. Some people might call it frugal today. Some people might call it cheap. But the bottom line is people of that generation did not want to spend more money than they had, and they really hesitated to go into debt. Well, today we can look at something called the ecological overshoot. And what that means is we can determine how much of our Earth's resources we're consuming. Well, it turns out since the 1970s, we have been consuming more resources than the Earth generates in a year. So today, humanity is actually using 1.7 Earth's resources each and every year. Clearly, this is not a sustainable situation. So I'd like to talk about energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is a great part of sustainability because not only does it support sustainability through reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and we know through internal and external studies that energy efficiency is the most cost-effective way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So not only does it do that, often energy efficiency projects are economically attractive. So we reset our program in 2010 when we joined the Department of Energy program, and at that time, we did not have an energy efficiency capital budget. As I became the energy manager that year, I went out and talked to people in manufacturing, and I learned that there were many good ideas for energy efficiency, but they often didn't have the capital to do it. And we heard a little bit about that from Leslie earlier, that General Mills had experienced the same thing. So today we do have a capital budget, and you may ask how we got approval for that. Well, it was fairly simple. I just talked to people in manufacturing. I collected a list of projects that had not been funded for some reason or the other, really because of competing with other projects, with other demands, and presented a portfolio of those projects ranked by internal rate of return to the Energy Efficiency Executive Steering Committee. And the committee immediately approved $4.2 million for energy projects and drew the line at everything 23% internal rate of return and better. I had shown someone this slide and they questioned the word immediately, but it's true. In a 1-hour meeting, they gave me $4.2 million. What that doesn't really show is the work that went into that. So the executive steering team was extremely important. It really took the public sustainability commitment to make our company realize we needed that top-level support. I had developed a relationship with the Executive Steering Committee over months of meeting with them and talking about what we were doing related to energy efficiency. And one lesson I had learned is that when I initially talked about payback time, that was not really what they related to. They thought about projects in terms of internal rate of return. So I learned to present things in the language that they wanted to see. So while the decision was immediate, it doesn't truly reflect the work that went into the immediate decision. Because there's often a lot of interest in having a capital energy budget, I would like to go into a little bit more detail about how we administer that budget. So when I first got the money, I could okay anything that was less than $1 million and more than 20% internal rate of return. Anything that was outside of those limits, either more than $1 million or less than 20%, had to be reviewed with my energy champion, who was a vice president within the company. Oh, I heard something. Over time, and with proven success, I became the final approval. They found that all my recommendations were accepted, so there was little value in asking for the VP approval. The way it works is that funds are transferred to the operations area, where the project is then subject to normal checks and balances of our capital program. And because we did continue to show good returns, our funding grew to $8 million a year. We do have one specific person on our energy team who is responsible for the budget. She gets the request, they're sent to her, and she collaborates with the requester to make sure she has all the needed information. One important thing she does is to confirm that the project requires capital money. The person requesting it may not have a good understanding of what's expense and what's capital, so she works with them to confirm that. She then provides that information to me and monitors the spend and progress for each project, and then finally reports the IRR for the total portfolio. So we're not required to maintain a certain IRR for each individual product, but the company does expect us to have an IRR for our portfolio of more than 20%, and so far we've had no trouble meeting that. So we use the money to fund projects, and I'll mention a couple of specific things here. One thing that we added over time is the ability to incrementally fund energy efficient equipment. So for example, if a business is funding a pump, but they don't want to spend the extra money for a variable speed drive, we can fund just that piece of the project. And we've added water projects as well. We love to see projects that reduce both water and energy, and so one of our priorities has been increasing condensate return because you're saving water and energy. And I can tell you, having that capital budget really changed the conversation when we work with manufacturing. In justifying the budget, while energy projects do benefit the company in a number of ways, I believe getting the money, the key to getting the money is to show the savings. The third lesson is be true to your values. When we started something, my parents expected us to continue with it. One year I asked to play softball. I found out I was not good at it and I didn't like it. But my parents wouldn't hear of me quitting. Even though I sat on the bench the whole season, I went to every practice and every game. In a similar way, we need to be consistent with our energy program. So I had an interesting experience. I asked a previous energy manager who had retired from Eastman if I could take him to lunch one day. I was just interested in the history of the energy program and how things had been done in the past. And two things that I thought had been achieved under my watch, the capital budget and a full-time energy manager, it turned out we'd had those things in the past, but they hadn't lasted. And so as I looked into it, what I learned is that our interest in energy efficiency had ebbed and flowed with energy prices. When energy prices were high, we did a lot, and when they went low, not so much. So I do think these things are going to be different in the future because of the importance of sustainability, the public reporting we have, and really the demand from our customers to show that we are sustainable and we are prioritizing things like energy efficiency. The last lesson I'll share is to plan for the future. My parents didn't go to college. Most of their siblings didn't go to college. But in growing up, I always heard the term, when you go to college. The word if was never in that sentence. And I would like to tell this young woman that she probably should have had her eyes open when she was facing the future, but this is the picture I had. So in a similar way, we have to plan for the future of our energy program. So I'll mention a few things here. You have to have an energy management system. If you don't have an energy management system, you may be too dependent on the people who are doing the work, not the system itself. You want something that is going to stay after the people leave. Eastman has chosen to use the Energy Star guidelines for energy management, and that is a great roadmap for developing an energy efficiency program, or if you have one like we did, it's good for looking at where the gaps are, identifying those, and getting ideas for how you can fill the gaps. The capital energy budget that I mentioned became part of the base budget. Over time, as the company saw the value of that energy spend, rather than having to justify that money every year, it became part of the base, and I don't have to justify it every year, it's just there. We rely on standardized measures. In 2010, when we became part of the DOE Better Plants program, we started using the methodology they had for their measures. We're using regression analysis, and we're normalizing for temperature and production and other weather variables. And what we learned is we weren't as good as we thought. We had some examples in the past where we thought we were doing better with energy intensity because of production increases. The standardized measures have given us a much better feel for where we actually stand and whether we're moving in the right direction. We're working on tools to monitor and optimize energy use. We want to put the right information in front of the right people. We know our people want to make the right decision, but they can't do it unless they have the information to allow them to do so. Eastman has announced that we are implementing a carbon price. Some of our international sites already have a carbon tax, but we want to implement that worldwide. And what that's going to do is to make the economics of our energy efficiency projects even better, and it's going to cause additional thought and discussion about new projects that consume additional energy and create more greenhouse gas emissions. We work hard to train our employees so that they know what to look for to be more energy efficient, and we do a lot of things around awareness. We want our employees to be thinking about energy efficiency and living a greener lifestyle, things that apply both at home and at work. We also need to structure our programs to maintain the gains. One of our more successful efforts we had was a time several years ago when production was decreasing. And what we found is we didn't have processes in place to quickly implement changes that would decrease energy use with declining production. So we've developed plans for doing that. We've put triggers and control plans in place so that if production decreases, we quickly know what to do and we're ready to implement those plans. So I'd like to just close with saying that I think many of the values of a simpler time can be compared to sustainability today. And I hope you'll think about some of those values you may have internalized in a simpler time and think about how you can apply those, both in your work and at home. But one thing to remember is you must be consistent and plan for the future if you're going to achieve long-term gains. Thank you.